I am Evadne, 28 years old and a successful real estate agent who just opened my own boutique firm in downtown Chicago. Growing up in a prominent Lake Forest family meant everything had to be perfect, every detail scrutinized. This year had been challenging since I left my father's commercial real estate empire to build something of my own. As I arrived at my parents' sprawling lakefront estate, carrying homemade apple cinnamon cookies, they stood blocking the entrance with expressions colder than the November wind. "You are not welcome here," my father said without emotion. Through the massive windows, I could see my sister Zelise, my uncle Cassian, and even my closest friend Lumina laughing around the elaborately set dining table. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments which state you are watching from, and make sure to hit that like button and subscribe because one phone call I made that afternoon changed everything forever. The magnificent Tudor-style mansion on Lake Forest's exclusive Sheridan Road represented everything my family stood for: tradition, prestige, and absolute control. My father, Thaddeus Gisser, had built Gisser Commercial Properties into Chicago's most influential real estate development company over 30 years. Success was not just expected in our household, it was the only acceptable path forward. My mother, Ornella, devoted her entire existence to maintaining our family's social standing among Chicago's elite. She chaired multiple charity galas, hosted flawless dinner parties for business associates, and monitored every aspect of Zelise and my behavior with military precision. A Gisser never shows vulnerability. She would remind us whenever we displayed any emotion she considered inappropriate for our station. My older sister Zelise had followed our father's blueprint perfectly, graduating from Northwestern's business school and immediately joining Gisser Commercial Properties as a senior acquisitions manager. She excelled at every project she touched, becoming the golden child who never questioned family expectations or challenged established methods. I, however, discovered my passion lay in residential real estate and community development, much to my father's visible disappointment. "Selling houses to suburban families is beneath a Gisser," he declared during one particularly tense family dinner. "Anyone can show properties and smile at clients. Real estate development requires vision and sophistication." Despite his harsh judgment, I earned my license and reluctantly joined Gisser Commercial Properties in their residential division. For 4 years, I worked relentlessly to prove my value, eventually becoming the director of luxury residential sales and client relations. My success with high-end clients brought significant revenue to the company, but it never seemed enough to earn my father's respect or acknowledgement. Everything began shifting 7 months ago when I discovered some questionable financial documents while preparing a presentation for our biggest commercial client, Meridian Investment Group. Multiple property transactions showed irregular fund transfers, inflated valuation reports, and payments to shell companies that raised serious red flags about money laundering and tax evasion. When I brought these concerns to my father, his reaction surprised and alarmed me. "Those transactions are handled personally by me," he snapped, yanking the files from my hands. "Some matters are beyond your understanding, Evadne. Focus on your residential listings and leave the complex business to those qualified to handle it." That confrontation sparked weeks of mounting tension throughout the office. I noticed my access to certain client files became mysteriously restricted. My sister Zelise began attending meetings I had previously led without explanation. My questions about company practices were met with dismissal or outright hostility from colleagues who had once treated me as an equal. Lumina had been my closest friend since our college days at DePaul University. We bonded during late-night study sessions and supported each other through every major life transition. My family embraced her immediately, with my mother often remarking that Lumina was practically a Gisser herself. She joined our family firm 18 months after I did, working in commercial property management and client relations. Lumina became a constant presence at family gatherings, joining us for holidays, weekend trips to our Wisconsin lake house, and weekly Sunday dinners at the estate. Uncle Cassian, my father's younger brother and the company's chief legal counsel, had always been different from Thaddeus. He encouraged my independent thinking and occasionally defended me during heated family discussions. The company needs fresh perspectives, he would argue during board meetings. Evadne brings valuable insights that could help us adapt to changing markets. But his support seemed to waver in recent months, and his once warm demeanor grew noticeably cooler whenever I raised concerns about certain business practices. The breaking point arrived when I successfully secured Lakeshore Development Corporation as a major client, a deal my father had been pursuing aggressively for over 2 years. Instead of celebration or recognition, my success triggered immediate suspicion and interrogation. "How exactly did you convince Marcus Lakeshore to sign with us?" my father demanded during a private meeting in his corner office. "What promises did you make that I should know about?" "I created a comprehensive development strategy specifically tailored to their expansion goals. I researched their previous projects, identified their preferences, and presented solutions that matched their vision. I simply did my job effectively." "Your job is to support this family's interests and maintain our reputation, not to build your personal client portfolio or establish independent relations that could compromise our established protocols." 2 weeks after that conversation, I made the difficult decision to resign from Gisser Commercial Properties and launch Evadne Residential Group, taking several hard-earned client relationships with me. The family reaction was swift, severe, and completely disproportionate to what should have been a normal business transition. My mother immediately stopped returning my phone calls. Zelise sent a scathing email accusing me of betrayal and corporate theft. My father threatened legal action for client solicitation, but ultimately backed down when his attorneys advised that my actions were completely legal and ethical. Only my cousin Noel Wen maintained regular contact, occasionally meeting me for coffee and providing glimpses into the increasingly tense family discussions happening behind closed doors. "They discuss you like you are an enemy, Mao," she confided during our last meeting 3 weeks ago. "Something significant is happening at the company that has everyone extremely nervous. The atmosphere in the office has become almost paranoid." Thanksgiving had always been sacred in our family tradition. My mother spent weeks planning every detail of the menu, decorations, and seating arrangements with obsessive precision. My father used the occasion to reinforce family bonds, company loyalty, and the importance of maintaining Gisser family unity above all other considerations. Despite our recent estrangement, I never imagined they would completely exclude me from this cherished tradition. I called my mother the Tuesday before Thanksgiving to confirm the usual arrangements. "The standard time, dear," she said, with noticeable coldness in her voice. 2 o'clock sharp, and please dress appropriately for the occasion." Her tone concerned me, but I interpreted it as typical maternal criticism rather than a warning of the devastating rejection that awaited me.
Part 3 of 10. Thanksgiving Sabahi and Reddedilme. Hangi parttayız? 3/10. Thanksgiving Sabahı ve kapıda reddedilme. Thanksgiving morning arrived with crisp autumn sunshine filtering through my downtown Chicago apartment windows. I woke up feeling cautiously optimistic about potentially reconciling with my family. The previous evening, I had baked my father's favorite apple cinnamon cookies using my grandmother's handwritten recipe. The warm aroma of cinnamon and brown butter had filled my kitchen, creating the comforting atmosphere I hoped would soften the tension that had built between us over the past months. I spent over an hour carefully selecting my outfit, finally deciding on a navy cashmere sweater and charcoal wool pants that my mother had once praised during a family dinner. My hair was styled in the classic way she preferred, and I applied minimal makeup,
knowing she disapproved of anything she considered too bold or attention-seeking. Every choice was deliberately calculated to avoid criticism and create the smoothest possible path toward family reconciliation. Family is everything, I reminded myself, repeating my father's most frequently quoted principle as I gathered my purse, the carefully packaged cookies, and a bottle of premium Pinot Noir from a local vineyard I had discovered through my real estate work. This small gift represented my professional success and independence, something I still hope they might eventually come to appreciate and respect. The drive to Lake Forest took 45 minutes through surprisingly light holiday traffic. During the journey, I rehearsed potential conversation topics and responses. I would ask Zelise about her recent business trip to Denver. I would compliment my mother on her table setting, which was always worthy of magazine photography. I would discuss the Bears season with Uncle Cassian, carefully avoiding any mention of business matters or my departure from the family firm. As I turned onto Sheridan Road, my stomach tightened when I noticed an unusual number of vehicles parked along the circular driveway and nearby street. I immediately recognized Lumina's silver BMW, which surprised me since she typically arrived with me during previous holiday celebrations. I also spotted Uncle Cassian's black Mercedes, my sister's white Range Rover, and several cars belonging to family friends and business associates I had known since childhood. I parked behind a car I didn't recognize and checked my reflection in the rear-view mirror one final time before gathering my contributions and walking toward the imposing Tudor mansion where I had spent my childhood. The November air carried the scent of wood smoke and roasting turkey from neighboring estates. Through the tall leaded windows of my parents' home, I could see movement and the warm glow of candles flickering against the rich mahogany paneling. My heart pounded as I climbed the familiar stone steps, passing the elaborate autumn wreaths my mother had commissioned from her favorite florist. Through the decorative glass panels flanking the massive front door, I caught glimpses of people gathered in the marble foyer and the formal dining room beyond. The sound of animated conversation and classical music drifted out, along with the mouth-watering aromas of traditional holiday cooking. I shifted the cookie container to one arm and pressed the brass doorbell, taking a deep breath to calm my increasingly nervous energy. The conversation inside immediately diminished to hushed whispers. I heard deliberate footsteps approaching across the marble floor, and my pulse quickened with anticipation. When the heavy wooden doors swung open, both my parents stood in the entryway like sentries guarding a fortress. My mother wore her signature pearl gray cocktail dress with her grandmother's diamond earrings, while my father was immaculate in his navy blazer with gold buttons and his fraternity tie. Their expressions were identical masks of cold disapproval. "Evadne," my father said, his voice completely devoid of warmth or welcome. "What are you doing here?" Confusion washed over me like ice water. "I am here for Thanksgiving dinner," I replied, genuinely bewildered. "Mother confirmed last week that dinner starts at 2 o'clock. My mother's perfectly manicured hand tightened visibly on the doorframe. "There has been a misunderstanding," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are not invited this year." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Through the space between them, I could see directly into the formal dining room, where the table was set with our family's finest china, crystal stemware, and silver serving pieces. The elaborate centerpiece of autumn flowers and seasonal gourds that my mother created every year dominated the center of the mahogany table. Around that table sat familiar faces from my entire life, including my sister Zelise, wearing an elegant burgundy dress, Uncle Cassian holding a glass of his favorite scotch, and most shockingly, Lumina occupying what had always been my designated seat at family gatherings. Every conversation had stopped completely. Everyone was watching the humiliating scene unfolding at the front door, with expressions ranging from uncomfortable embarrassment to barely concealed satisfaction. Some faces showed genuine discomfort at witnessing my rejection. Others displayed curious fascination with the family drama. A few, including Lumina and my sister, wore expressions that looked disturbingly like triumph or vindication. Lumina quickly averted her eyes when our gazes met, but I caught the flash of guilt and shame in her expression. "But I brought cookies," I said weakly, the absurdity of my statement hitting me even as the words left my mouth. "Apple cinnamon recipe. Father's favorite." "That will be necessary," my father replied, making no move to accept the container. "We have dessert arrangements already handled by the catering staff. I think it would be best if you left immediately."
I stood there motionless, the cookie container growing heavy in my arms, as the devastating reality of the situation slowly penetrated my consciousness. This was not a spontaneous decision or a simple misunderstanding that could be resolved with explanation. This was deliberately planned and carefully orchestrated. They had intentionally excluded me while inviting everyone else, including my supposed best friend, who now occupied my traditional place at the family table. "Can I at least ask why?" I managed, struggling desperately to keep my voice steady despite the emotional turmoil building inside me. "I think you know exactly why," my mother replied, her voice barely audible but carrying unmistakable finality. "Your choices have serious consequences, Evadne." Without offering any further explanation or opportunity for discussion, my father began closing the heavy door between us. "Goodbye, Evadne. Drive safely back to the city." The door shut with resounding finality, leaving me standing completely alone on the stone steps, with homemade cookies and expensive wine that were meant to be shared with family. Through the thick wooden barrier, I could hear conversation gradually resuming inside, though more subdued than before my arrival. Someone turned up the classical music volume, apparently attempting to drown out any lingering awkwardness from my very public dismissal. I remained frozen in place for several long seconds, too stunned and devastated to move. Pride and dignity kept my shoulders straight and my head high as I turned and walked back down the steps toward my car. I absolutely refused to give them the satisfaction of witnessing me break down emotionally. The walk back to my car felt endless, each step requiring conscious effort as I carefully balanced the now meaningless cookies and fought back tears that threatened to spill over. Once safely inside my car, I placed the cookie container carefully on the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel tightly, staring back at the house where I had grown up and spent countless holidays. Through the large bay window, I could see the dining room where my family and former friends were now gathering around the table for their celebration. A new banner hung prominently on the wall behind my father's chair at the head of the table. Even from this distance, I could make out the gold lettering that read, "Family First." The bitter irony was not lost on me. Family first, apparently, unless that family member questioned unethical business practices or chose independence over blind loyalty. The hurt that had initially numbed me at the door began transforming into something entirely different: anger. Not the hot, impulsive rage that leads to regrettable actions, but a cold, clarifying anger that sharpened my thoughts and strengthened my resolve for what needed to come next. They had made their choice crystal clear, and now I would make mine. I drove away from Lake Forest with no particular destination in mind, simply needing to put physical distance between myself and the scene of my humiliation. Holiday traffic was surprisingly light, and I found myself heading toward Lake Michigan. I pulled into a scenic overlook near Montrose Harbor, shut off the engine, and finally allowed myself to fully process the magnitude of what had just occurred. My family had not simply excluded me from dinner. They had orchestrated a complete and total rejection designed to maximize emotional impact and public embarrassment. The presence of Lumina in my designated seat was absolutely not coincidental. She had advanced knowledge of this plan and had chosen to participate rather than warn me or stand by our friendship. Uncle Cassian, who had always been my advocate within the family, sat among them without any apparent protest or objection to my treatment. The calculated cruelty of the entire scene left me struggling to breathe normally. As I stared across the gray waters of Lake Michigan, watching seagulls circle above the waves, a memory suddenly surfaced of Marcus Chen, a friend from my brief time in law school before switching to business administration. Marcus had specialized in financial fraud investigation and now worked for the Federal Bureau of Investigation's White-Collar Crime Division. 2 months ago, we had reconnected at a Northwestern alumni networking event downtown. Something doesn't feel right about some of the commercial transactions at my family's firm, I confided after several glasses of wine had loosened my tongue. Large transfers to overseas entities, inconsistent reporting patterns, property deals with questionable documentation and inflated valuations. Marcus had looked at me with intense professional interest. Do you have any concrete proof of these irregularities, Evadne? These are extremely serious allegations that could indicate systematic fraud. I copied some files before I left the company, I admitted, surprising myself with the confession. But I haven't examined them closely yet. Family loyalty and all that complicated emotional baggage, you know? But I kept them secured just in case future events required evidence. If you ever decide to review those documents thoroughly, Evadne, call me immediately. Some matters transcend family loyalty when they involve potential victims and federal crimes. I had tucked his card away in my wallet, trying unsuccessfully to forget both the conversation and the disturbing implications of what I might have accidentally discovered. Now, sitting in my car on Thanksgiving Day, completely cut off and rejected by my family, I reached for my phone and pulled up his contact information. My finger hovered over the call button for what felt like an eternity. This single action would cross a line that could never be uncrossed or taken back. Once I shared my suspicions and potential evidence with Marcus, events would be set in motion that could completely destroy everything my family had built over decades. Was I truly prepared for those devastating consequences?
Marcus answered on the second ring, the sound of children laughing and family conversation audible in the background. Evadne, happy Thanksgiving. Is everything all right? You sound stressed. Not exactly, I replied, my voice steadier than I had expected given the circumstances. Remember our conversation about those questionable files I mentioned copying from my family's firm? I think it's time I showed them to you. The background noise on his end diminished as he apparently moved to a quieter location away from his family gathering. This sounds extremely serious. Are you absolutely certain you want to pursue this investigation? Once we begin examining evidence, we cannot ignore what we discover, regardless of family connections. I'm completely sure, I said, surprising myself with my unwavering certainty. My family just made their position regarding me very clear. Now I need to stand by my principles and do what's right. I can meet you tomorrow morning, he said without hesitation. 8 o'clock at my downtown office. Bring absolutely everything you have, including any supporting documentation or correspondence. I'll be there, I promised, before ending the call. The drive back to my downtown apartment took longer than usual, as I deliberately took a circuitous route, passing places that held significant childhood memories. My elementary school, where I had won academic awards, the ice cream shop, where we celebrated good report cards and achievements, the park, where my father had patiently taught me to ride a bicycle. Each landmark represented a family and childhood that apparently no longer existed, if it ever truly had beneath the polished surface. I contrasted these nostalgic memories with Thanksgiving celebrations from previous years, my mother directing the precise placement of each dish with military precision, my father carving the turkey with surgical accuracy while delivering informal speeches about family loyalty, Zelise sharing news of her latest professional accomplishments and acquisitions, everyone dutifully playing their assigned roles in our carefully choreographed family performance. Had there ever been genuine emotional connection beneath the meticulously maintained veneer of success and propriety? My phone vibrated with an incoming text message from Zelise. "This outcome is for the best. You brought the situation entirely on yourself. No explanation, no apology, no attempt at understanding. Just cold judgment from the sister who had once shared my childhood secrets and dreams." I chose not to respond. My apartment building looked particularly isolated and lonely when I finally arrived. Earlier in the week, I had decorated my living room with tasteful autumn arrangements and had optimistically set my small dining table for two, still hoping for either an invitation elsewhere or perhaps a friend to join me for the holiday. Now those hopeful decorations seemed like painful reminders of my complete social isolation. I changed out of my carefully chosen outfit into comfortable jeans and a soft sweater, placing the rejected cookies on my kitchen counter next to the unopened wine bottle that had been intended for sharing. My refrigerator contained minimal ingredients appropriate for a traditional holiday meal, but I managed to find some cheese, crackers, and sliced turkey I had purchased earlier in the week, just in case. I arranged these simple items on a plate, alongside some grapes, and sat at my small dining table alone. "Happy Thanksgiving to me," I whispered, raising my wine glass in a solitary toast. The first sip somehow broke through the emotional barriers I had been maintaining all day. Tears came suddenly and violently, releasing years of suppressed emotions and frustrations. I cried for the family I thought I had, for the betrayal by Lumina, for the uncertain and lonely path that lay ahead of me. The tears eventually subsided, leaving behind a strange sense of clarity and purpose. I had been living in an uncomfortable limbo for months, neither fully separated from my family nor truly independent. Today's brutal rejection, as painful as it was, had severed those ties definitively and permanently. Now I needed to decide what direction my life would take next. I walked to my home office and opened the concealed panel behind my bookshelf, where I had hidden the documents copied from my father's confidential files. The time of denial and avoidance was completely over. The documents I had been avoiding for months now lay spread across my dining table, creating an undeniable paper trail of deception and fraud that I could no longer ignore. When I originally copied these files, I had acted purely on instinct, sensing something fundamentally wrong but unable to face the devastating implications. Now, with a glass of wine and nothing left to lose, I began methodically analyzing what I had discovered. Property transaction records from high-value commercial deals showed irregular patterns of fund transfers and suspicious payment structures. Investment reports contained significant discrepancies between reported property values and actual market assessments. There were numerous transfers to offshore entities with deliberately vague descriptions and minimal supporting documentation. What initially appeared as isolated irregularities gradually revealed themselves as components of a sophisticated and deliberate system of fraud. My father, the respected pillar of Chicago's commercial real estate community, had been systematically frauding investors and manipulating property valuations for years. And based on the email correspondence I discovered, he had not been operating alone in this criminal enterprise. I found detailed email exchanges between my father and Zelise discussing strategies for addressing client concerns by temporarily adjusting reported property values and reallocating investment funds. The clinical, business-like language barely disguised the reality. They were misrepresenting investment performance and using funds from new clients to cover obligations to existing clients. A sophisticated real estate Ponzi scheme executed with the expertise one would expect from Northwestern University business graduates. More disturbing were the emails that mentioned me directly and specifically. Evadne's access to the Patterson and Williams property files needs immediate restriction. Her marketing responsibilities do not require this level of detailed financial information. My father had written just 2 weeks before I discovered the initial irregularities. "Already implemented," Zelise had replied promptly.
Lumina has helped redirect her attention to the new client presentation materials instead. Should we be concerned about potential security risks? Lumina, my supposed loyal best friend. Her name appeared repeatedly throughout the email chains, often in contexts that made it abundantly clear that she had been actively working against me for months while maintaining our friendship as cover for surveillance and manipulation.
Evadne mentioned concerns about the offshore Patterson transfers, Lumina had written in one particularly damaging email exchange. I deflected by emphasizing client confidentiality protocols and suggesting she focus on residential marketing instead. Should we be worried about her level of suspicion? My father's response was absolutely chilling. Continue maintaining normal friendly relations with Evadne while we carefully assess the full scope of this potential security situation. We need to determine exactly what she suspects and whether she has discussed these matters with anyone outside the family or company. The devastating realization that Lumina had been systematically reporting on me to my family, using our deep friendship as a monitoring and manipulation tool, felt like a second profound betrayal that somehow cut even deeper than the first. I had trusted her completely, sharing my professional doubts, personal fears, and concerns about leaving the family business. She had encouraged me to take that independent leap, while apparently documenting every detail from my father's strategic planning. Further examination of the email chains revealed messages from the period after my departure from the firm. Lumina will assume control of Evadne's former client relationships, my father had written with business-like efficiency. Her demonstrated loyalty and discretion have earned her this significant advancement opportunity. Loyalty, the sacred word that my father valued above all other considerations, had been weaponized and turned against me with calculated precision. But the scope of betrayal extended far beyond professional manipulation and business espionage. A folder labeled Personal Documentation contained social media screenshots and photographs that initially seemed completely irrelevant to the financial fraud evidence. Then I began noticing the recurring pattern. Images of Lumina and Zelise together at social events I had not attended, their body language suggesting an intimacy that went beyond casual friendship or professional collaboration. The final photograph showed them embracing romantically at my father's lake house, clearly unaware they were being documented. The revelation of their secret romantic relationship explained so much about recent family dynamics and shifting loyalties. Lumina had not simply betrayed me professionally. She had been intimately involved with my sister while pretending to be my closest confidant and emotional support system. The depth and scope of their coordinated deception left me physically nauseated and emotionally devastated. My phone rang suddenly, startling me from my shocked analysis of the evidence. The caller identification showed Marcus Chen's name. I couldn't wait until tomorrow morning, he said without any preliminary greeting. I started conducting preliminary research into Gisser commercial properties after your call this afternoon, Evadne. There are serious federal red flags associated with several offshore investment accounts. The patterns strongly suggest systematic fraud dating back at least 4 years. I know, I replied, my voice hollow with exhaustion. I'm examining the documentary evidence right now, and there's much more than I initially realized. Yesterday, your family's firm held an emergency board meeting, Marcus continued, his tone becoming increasingly grave. Do you have any knowledge of what that meeting might have addressed? Let me check something, I said, searching through the most recent email correspondence. Yes, there was unusual corporate activity yesterday. My father transferred substantial company ownership percentages to my sister and to Lumina. Does that information mean anything significant to your investigation? It suggests they may be attempting to distance themselves from potential liability, Marcus replied. There's something else we need to discuss immediately. There was unauthorized activity detected in a trust fund registered under your name.
substantial withdrawals requiring dual signature authorization that you obviously did not provide, my trust fund, the inheritance from my grandparents that was supposed to remain completely untouchable until I reached 35 years old, they cannot legally access those funds without my explicit written signature, I protested, feeling a new wave of violation and theft. Someone apparently did exactly that, Marcus replied grimly. We'll need to investigate potential identity theft, document forgery, or other federal crimes. Evadne, I need to ask you this question directly and officially. Are you prepared to formally submit all of this evidence to federal authorities? This action will trigger a comprehensive investigation that will almost certainly result in serious criminal charges against multiple family members. The question hung heavy in the air between us like a sword waiting to fall. Despite everything I had discovered and endured, some small part of my heart still hesitated at the finality of this decision. These were not merely financial criminals and fraudsters. They were my family. My father, who had taught me to drive and celebrated my college graduation. My sister, who had protected me from neighborhood bullies during elementary school. My mother, who had cared for me during childhood illnesses. But they were also the people who had stood at that door today and coldly informed me I was unwelcome. The people who had conspired systematically behind my back, violated my personal trust fund, and used my closest friendship as a surveillance and manipulation tool against me. I will submit everything formally to federal authorities, I said with unexpected firmness. But I need time tonight to make complete digital copies and backups of all physical documents. Excellent decision, Marcus said. Secure everything carefully and comprehensively. Some of this crucial evidence could mysteriously disappear once they realize the scope of federal investigation they're facing. I spent the next 2 hours meticulously scanning every document and storing multiple copies on encrypted digital drives. I organized the evidence chronologically and by violation type, creating a comprehensive investigative package that even financial novices could easily follow and understand. The methodical documentation work helped calm my racing thoughts and further strengthen my determination. As I prepared to send the first batch of evidence files to Marcus, my finger paused over the send button on my laptop. This represented the absolute point of no return. Once these documents left my possession officially, events would unfold that could not be stopped, reversed, or controlled. My family would face public exposure, potential criminal prosecution, and the complete destruction of everything they had built over 3 decades. For one final moment, I saw my mother's face, not as it had appeared today at the door, but as it had been during my childhood when I sought comfort after nightmares. I heard my father's voice, not delivering cold rejection, but enthusiastically praising my academic achievements. I felt Zelise's hand in mine as we nervously faced our first day at a new school together. Then I remembered standing completely alone on those stone steps while the door closed definitively in my face. I recalled the systemic way they had undermined me professionally and personally, using my deepest trust against me. I thought of the innocent investors who had entrusted my father with their retirement savings and financial security, completely unaware that their futures were built on elaborate lies and criminal deception. I pressed send without further hesitation. Exactly 18 minutes after transmitting the evidence to federal authorities, my phone illuminated with an incoming message from my father. "What have you done?" The 3 words contained volumes of rage, panic, and desperate accusation. Before I could fully process this rapid response, additional notifications began flooding my phone. My mother called 4 times in rapid succession, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. "Evadne, Whatever you think you've discovered, you need to contact us immediately. This is a private family matter that should be handled discreetly within the family structure. Then came the unmistakable sound of my apartment building's main entrance buzzer. Through my security intercom, I could see the familiar figures of my entire family standing in the lobby, looking disheveled and desperate. My father appeared uncharacteristically frantic. My mother was pale and visibly shaking. Zelise had obvious tear streaks down her cheeks, and Lumina hung back with an expression of complete misery. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders with newfound confidence, and pressed the button to allow them entry to the building.
"How could you do this to us?" My father's voice exploded into my apartment hallway the moment I opened the door. His face was flushed with a rage I had rarely witnessed, even during our most heated professional disagreements. "To your own family? Do you have any comprehension of what you have just destroyed?" My mother stepped forward quickly, placing a restraining hand on his arm while glancing nervously toward neighboring apartment doors. "Not here, Thaddeus," she hissed urgently. "This conversation needs to happen privately, away from potential witnesses." I stood calmly in my doorway, unexpectedly composed, despite facing their collective fury and desperation. "If you want to discuss this situation, you can come inside," I said, stepping back to allow them entry. "But you will not shout at me or intimidate me in my own home." They filed in silently, creating an uncomfortable tableau in my modest living room. My father remained visibly agitated, practically vibrating with barely controlled anger. My mother surveyed my apartment with thinly veiled disdain, as if my middle-class lifestyle somehow proved her point about my poor judgment. Zelise appeared unable to meet my direct gaze, her usual confidence completely shattered. Lumina lingered awkwardly near the entrance, positioned as if planning a hasty escape if the confrontation escalated further. Notably absent was Uncle Cassian, whose absence I found both interesting and telling. "Sit down if you wish," I offered, gesturing toward my living room furniture. None of them accepted the invitation, apparently too agitated for normal social conventions. "You need to retract everything immediately," my father demanded, his voice slightly lower but maintaining its intense urgency. "Contact your federal agent friend and inform him this was all a terrible misunderstanding based on incomplete information. We can still contain the situation if we act decisively within the next few hours." "Retract documented evidence of systematic fraud?" I asked, raising an eyebrow with newfound confidence. "Retract proof of money laundering, tax evasion, and identity theft? I don't believe that's legally possible at this point, Father." "You don't understand the complexities of what you are interfering with," my mother interjected, her carefully maintained social facade slipping to reveal genuine panic. "Do you have any idea what this investigation will do to our family's reputation, to our social standing in the community? Every charity board position, every professional connection, everything we have carefully built over 30 years will be completely destroyed because you couldn't demonstrate basic family loyalty." "Loyalty," I repeated, tasting the bitter irony of that word. "Was it loyalty when you systematically restricted my access to company files? Was it loyalty when you violated my trust fund without authorization? Was it loyalty when you excluded me from Thanksgiving dinner while welcoming the woman who had been spying on me for months? Please help me understand your definition of loyalty, because it seems remarkably one-sided." Zelise finally spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. "You don't understand the impossible pressure we were facing," she said, collapsing onto my couch without invitation. "Father needed to maintain certain investment returns to keep our major clients from withdrawing their portfolios. When the commercial real estate market turned against us in late 2021, we had to make temporary adjustments just to keep the firm financially viable. It started as small, short-term reallocations of funds. Then the situation grew more complicated and harder to reverse." "Stop talking immediately, Zelise," my father snapped with alarm. "She could be recording this entire conversation for federal investigators." I almost laughed at his paranoid assumption.
I don't need to record anything. The documentary evidence speaks comprehensively for itself. Lumina stepped forward hesitantly, her eyes red from obvious crying. Evadne, please listen to me. This situation affects far more people than just your immediate family. There are dozens of employees who will lose their livelihoods, clients whose retirement funds and financial security will be completely ruined. There must be some alternative way to resolve this crisis without total destruction of everything. The audacity of her emotional plea ignited my carefully controlled anger. You have absolutely no right to speak to me about anything, I said with ice-cold precision. You systematically used our friendship to spy on me and report my every concern back to them. You documented my questions and doubts while pretending to support my independence. And you did all of this while secretly involved romantically with my sister. Did you enjoy manipulating me so thoroughly? Her face completely crumbled with shame and guilt. It wasn't like that initially, not at first. The relationship with Zelise developed later, after I was already involved in the company monitoring. I never intended to hurt you so deeply. A movement at my apartment door interrupted our intense confrontation. Uncle Cassian slipped quietly into the room, nodding briefly toward me before addressing my father with obvious urgency. Thaddeus, federal agents are currently securing all office files and computer systems. The Securities and Exchange Commission has already frozen the primary business accounts. You need to contact Gerald immediately for legal representation. He turned toward me with a mixture of respect and warning. I came specifically to warn you about something important. They are actively looking for someone to blame as the primary scapegoat, and they have apparently decided that person should be you. My father's expression shifted dramatically, confirming this calculated assessment. You were involved deeply enough in these account transactions to be legally implicated, he said, his tone changing from rage to cold manipulation. If you cooperate with us now and present this situation as a misunderstanding or overreaction, we can protect you from serious legal consequences. Otherwise, our attorneys will have no choice but to present evidence of your direct involvement and knowledge. Evidence you would completely fabricate, I replied with calm certainty. But that strategy won't be effective. I have been meticulously documenting my concerns about restricted access to those accounts for months. Marcus Chen has the complete timeline of my discoveries, questions, and communications. Additionally, I was never a signatory on any of the fraudulent transfers or offshore accounts. My father's face darkened visibly at my mention of Marcus's name and position. So this entire betrayal is about some federal agent boyfriend? You are willing to destroy your family for a romantic relationship with a government employee? This is about doing what is ethically and legally right, I countered firmly, something this family seems to have forgotten completely during your pursuit of profit and social status. My mother approached me with a different tactical approach, attempting maternal manipulation. Darling, we can fix this situation completely. Your father can transfer legitimate funds to cover any accounting discrepancies. No investors will actually lose money in the end. The firm can recover and continue operating. We can welcome you back into the family, restore your position with even greater authority and compensation. Whatever you want, we can arrange. The transparent bribery attempt was almost pathetic in its desperation. It's far too late for those kinds of arrangements. Federal authorities already have all the evidence and documentation. Name your price, my father said with brutal directness. Everyone has one, Evadne. $1 million? $5 million? Your own division within the company with complete autonomy? What exactly will it take for you to help us contain this federal investigation? I looked at him directly, truly seeing the man who had raised me now fully revealed as someone who believed absolutely everything and everyone could be purchased with sufficient financial incentive. I already have what I need, I replied with quiet dignity. The truth.
Truth? My father scoffed with bitter contempt.
Truth doesn't pay bills, maintain reputations, or preserve family legacies. Truth is a luxury for people who don't understand how the real world actually operates and survives. I understand exactly how your world operates now, I replied steadily, and I want absolutely no part of it anymore. Zelise stood abruptly from the couch, her composure finally cracking completely. She's not going to help us, she announced to my father with defeated resignation. But there's something else you should know about our legal situation. She controls the Norton family trust shares now that she's reached 28. If those shares vote with the board members who are already questioning your leadership decisions, you could lose controlling interest in the company even without this federal investigation. My father whirled toward me, his expression transforming from dismissive anger to calculating assessment. Is this really about control and power within the company structure? Because we can negotiate that kind of arrangement right now. No, I said with absolute firmness. This is about accountability and facing appropriate consequences for choices made knowingly and repeatedly over years. This is about all the innocent people who trusted you with their retirement savings and financial futures while you systematically used their money as your personal investment fund. My mother suddenly crumpled onto my couch, the devastating reality of their situation finally penetrating her denial. "We will be completely ruined," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Everything we built, everything we represent in this community, our entire social identity, gone forever." Zelise stood abruptly from the couch. Zelise knelt beside her immediately, offering comfort while directing accusing glares in my direction. Lumina continued standing awkwardly between the competing factions, belonging nowhere and welcomed by no one. "You never should have pushed me away so completely," I said, quietly but firmly. "You never should have treated me like an enemy and outsider within my own family structure. Maybe if you had included me and trusted me, I could have helped you find better solutions to your financial problems." "You are dead to us," my father spat, his final desperate attempt at emotional manipulation and control. "After today, you are no longer a Gisser. Your name will be removed from all family documents and inheritance arrangements." I met his furious gaze with steady composure. "I stopped being a Gisser the moment you closed that door in my face this afternoon. Now, I need all of you to leave my apartment immediately. My attorney will contact you regarding any future communications or legal matters." Lumina made one final attempt to approach me directly. "Evadne, please understand. I know I hurt you more terribly than words can express, but you have to believe that I genuinely cared about you. Our friendship wasn't entirely fabricated or manipulative. A real friend wouldn't have sat at that table today while I was being turned away and humiliated. A real friend would have stood up, walked out, and warned me about what was planned. You made your choice deliberately, Lumina. Now you get to live with those consequences just like everyone else in this room." One by one, they filed out of my apartment like defeated soldiers retreating from a lost battle. My father stormed out without another word, his rage still radiating through his rigid posture. My mother paused briefly at the door, looking back with a complex mixture of anger, loss, and something that might have been regret before following him into the hallway. Zelise hesitated for several seconds, appearing on the verge of saying something meaningful or apologetic, but ultimately just shook her head sadly and left in silence. Lumina was the last to leave, tears streaming continuously down her face as she whispered a final, barely audible, "I'm truly sorry," that echoed hollowly in my living room. Uncle Cassian lingered briefly after the others had departed. "This situation will definitely get much worse before it improves," he warned me with genuine concern. "But you absolutely did the right thing, Evadne. I should have taken this action myself years ago when I first began suspecting the irregularities. My cowardice and misplaced family loyalty made me complicit in their crimes." He squeezed my shoulder gently with paternal affection before following the others down the hallway. When my apartment door finally closed behind them, I stood surrounded by sudden silence, the scattered remnants of my makeshift Thanksgiving meal, and the documentary evidence that had permanently changed everything.
For the first time that entire day, I allowed myself to fully acknowledge the complete weight of what had transpired and what challenges still lay ahead. The family I had known and loved was gone forever, destroyed not by my actions, but by their own choices and moral compromises. But in its place was something I had never fully possessed before: the freedom to live according to my own ethical principles, regardless of the personal cost or social consequences. My phone buzzed with a text message from my cousin Noel Wen, who had somehow learned about the evening's events. "I heard what happened today and about the federal investigation. I want you to know that some of us understand why you did what you did. You showed more courage than anyone else in this family has demonstrated in years. Be careful and stay strong." The unexpected support from someone within the extended family structure provided a small but meaningful validation of my decisions. Over the following hours, my phone continued receiving messages and calls from various sources. Former colleagues from Gisser Commercial Properties expressing shock and seeking information about their job security, clients asking about the status of their investments and property transactions, local news reporters requesting interviews about the federal investigation. I ignored most of these communications, following Marcus Chen's advice to avoid discussing the situation until the investigation was complete. One message particularly caught my attention. From Thomas Meridian, the client's account irregularities had first triggered my suspicions months earlier. "Thank you for your courage in exposing this fraud. My retirement savings were among those being misappropriated. Your actions may have saved my family's financial future." Reading his gratitude reinforced my conviction that I had made the right choice, despite the personal cost to my family relationships. As I prepared for bed that night, I reflected on the extraordinary transformation that had occurred in just one day. I had awakened that morning hoping to reconcile with my family over Thanksgiving dinner. I was ending the day having exposed their criminal enterprise to federal authorities and permanently severed all family ties. The family I had known and loved was gone forever, destroyed not by my actions, but by their own choices and moral compromises. But in its place was something I had never fully possessed before: the freedom to live according to my own ethical principles, regardless of the personal cost or social consequences.
1 year later, I stood in my kitchen arranging a beautiful bouquet of autumn chrysanthemums and maple branches for my dining table. The rich aroma of roasting turkey, sage stuffing, and fresh-baked dinner rolls filled my new home, a charming brownstone in Lincoln Park that I had purchased 8 months ago with proceeds from my thriving real estate consultancy. Through the open archway, I could see my dining table elegantly set for 10 people, complete with personalized place cards and handwritten gratitude notes at each setting. The past 12 months had unfolded in ways I could never have predicted on that devastating Thanksgiving day, when I stood rejected at my parents' door. The federal investigation into Gisser Commercial Properties revealed systematic fraud affecting over 200 clients and involving millions of dollars in misappropriated funds. My father, facing multiple federal charges, including money laundering and securities fraud, ultimately accepted a comprehensive plea agreement that included full cooperation with authorities, substantial financial restitution, and 2 years of house arrest rather than federal prison time. His reputation in Chicago's commercial real estate community was completely destroyed, but he had avoided the most severe legal consequences by surrendering control of the firm to a court-appointed restructuring board. That board, surprisingly, had approached me 4 months after the scandal became public knowledge. "We need someone with the Gisser name who understands the business operations but wasn't implicated in the fraudulent activities," the new chairperson had explained during our initial meeting. "Your reputation for ethical practices and client advocacy is exactly what this company needs to rebuild trust and credibility in the market." After careful consideration and extensive legal consultation, I accepted a position on the restructuring board with primary oversight of compliance protocols and ethical business practices. The irony of becoming my family's moral compass and ethical guardian was not lost on me, but I embraced the opportunity to help repair the damage done to innocent clients and employees. My relationship with various family members had evolved in completely unexpected directions over the past year. My mother maintained her cold distance and apparent inability to forgive me for the public humiliation and social exile she had experienced. Her standing in Chicago society had crumbled entirely, and she had retreated to their Wisconsin lake house, rarely venturing into public or maintaining her previous social connections. Zelise, however, had surprised me by reaching out 6 months after our confrontation. "I've been working with a therapist," she admitted during our first cautious coffee meeting at a neutral downtown location. "I needed to understand why I went along with everything, why I prioritized father's approval over basic ethical principles and family loyalty." Our relationship remained fragile and tentative, rebuilding slowly through monthly conversations that gradually became more honest, vulnerable, and less guarded. She had found employment at a small commercial real estate firm in Milwaukee, starting over from an entry-level position, but discovering genuine satisfaction in straightforward, ethical business practices. "I sleep better at night now," she had confided during our most recent meeting. "Even though I'm making a fraction of my previous salary, I'm not constantly worried about covering up lies or maintaining fraudulent schemes." Lumina had made several persistent attempts to reconcile our friendship, sending lengthy letters and emails, explaining her perspective, apologizing for her betrayal, and requesting opportunities to rebuild our relationship. While I eventually responded with formal forgiveness for my own emotional healing, I made it absolutely clear that our friendship could never be restored to its previous intimacy and trust. Some breaches of trust are simply too profound and systematic to repair, I had written in my final response to her outreach. "I wish you well in your future endeavors, but our paths will not cross again by my choice." Uncle Cassian had become an unexpected ally and mentor during the company restructuring process, using his legal expertise to help protect innocent employees and clients from the investigation's fallout. "I enabled your father's behavior for far too long," he had confessed during one of our late-night working sessions at the temporary offices. "Standing by silently while questioning privately is its own form of moral complicity and cowardice." He now served alongside me on the restructured board of directors, ensuring the company operated with completely transparent practices and rigorous ethical oversight. Most surprisingly and gratefully, my cousin Lonwyn had joined my independent marketing consultancy, bringing her financial expertise and genuine ethical compass to our rapidly growing client base. "I always admired your courage and independence," she had told me when requesting to leave the family firm and join my company. "Even before everything exploded publicly, I watched you chart your own course, instead of following the prescribed Gisser path of blind obedience." The doorbell's chime interrupted my nostalgic reflections. Nolwenn arrived first, carrying a bottle of excellent wine and her famous homemade cranberry orange sauce. "Happy Thanksgiving," she greeted me with a warm, genuine embrace. "Your first time hosting a major holiday. How does it feel?" "Terrifying and wonderful simultaneously. I have absolutely no idea if this turkey will be edible or if I've completely ruined the timing on everything." "The food quality hardly matters," she replied with wise insight. "This is about creating a welcoming space where people feel valued and appreciated for who they authentically are, not who they're expected to be." Over the next hour, my chosen family gradually arrived at my home. Marcus Chen and his wife Grace, Uncle Cassian and his partner Robert, my former assistant Bethany, who had courageously left the family firm to join my consultancy, my neighbor Mrs. Peterson, who had no family in Chicago, and 2 clients who had become genuine friends through our professional relationship. Finally, to my complete surprise, Zelise arrived alone, carrying a carefully wrapped pecan pie. I remembered it was Father's traditional favorite, but I also remembered that you love pecan pie too. I thought maybe we could start some new traditions together. The simple gesture of acknowledging our shared history while respecting our new beginning brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Yes, I managed with genuine emotion. Thank you for remembering and for being here. As we gathered around my dining table, I looked at the faces of people connected not by biological obligation or legal genetics, but by deliberate choice, mutual respect, and shared values. These relationships, built on authenticity and genuine care rather than expectation and performance, had become my true family. Before we begin eating, I said, raising my wine glass toward my guests, I want to express my profound gratitude for each person sitting at this table. 1 year ago, I believed that losing my biological family meant losing everything that mattered. Instead, it created space for something far more genuine and meaningful to grow and flourish. I have learned that family is not defined by shared blood or legal obligations, but by who chooses to stand beside you when that choice requires courage, sacrifice, or personal cost.
We shared a moment of meaningful silence and reflection before the conversation and genuine laughter resumed around my table. Later, as we enjoyed coffee with dessert, I realized that the painful rejection of last Thanksgiving had been absolutely necessary to break the toxic patterns that had kept me tethered to superficial relationships built on manipulation, control, and conditional acceptance. The journey had been emotionally excruciating at times, filled with sleepless nights, legal stress, and the profound grief of losing the family I thought I had known. But ultimately, it led me to a truth I might otherwise never have discovered. Creating authentic connections based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine care brings infinitely deeper fulfillment than maintaining elaborate performances designed to meet others' expectations. As the evening gradually wound down and my guests prepared to leave, I felt a contentment and peace that no perfectly orchestrated family performance had ever provided. This Thanksgiving, unlike any in my previous experience, was completely genuine and authentic. From the slightly overcooked turkey to the mismatched chairs borrowed from generous neighbors, every imperfection made it more real and meaningful. "Thank you for showing us what family really means," Bethany said as she gathered her coat and purse. "This has been the most honest and loving Thanksgiving I've ever experienced." Marcus Chen shook my hand warmly before departing. "Your courage in exposing that fraud saved dozens of families from financial ruin. The investigation is officially closing next month, and every defrauded client will receive full restitution. You should be extremely proud of the difference you made." Uncle Cassian was among the last to leave, embracing me with paternal affection. "Your grandmother would be so proud of the woman you've become," he whispered. "She always said integrity was worth more than wealth or social standing. You proved her right." Zelise lingered after the others had departed, helping me clear dishes and store leftovers. "I want you to know something important," she said as we worked together in comfortable silence. "I've been meeting regularly with some of Father's victims, the clients who lost money in his schemes. I'm working with them on a support group for financial fraud survivors. Would you consider joining us occasionally? Your perspective could help others find the courage to speak up when they encounter suspicious situations." The invitation to transform our painful experience into something helpful for others felt like the perfect way to honor what we had endured. "I would be honored to help," I replied without hesitation. As I stood alone in my kitchen after everyone had gone, washing the last of the dishes and reflecting on the day, my phone buzzed with an unexpected message. It was from Thomas Meridian, the client whose account irregularities had originally triggered my investigation. "Happy Thanksgiving, Evadne. My family gathered today to celebrate not just the holiday, but the fact that our retirement savings were protected because of your bravery. My granddaughter asked me to tell her about heroes, and I told her about you. Thank you for showing all of us that doing the right thing, even when it's difficult, always matters." Reading his message reinforced my absolute conviction that every painful moment of the past year had been worthwhile.
Sometimes the most difficult choices lead to the most important outcomes, not just for ourselves, but for countless others we may never meet. As I turned off the lights and prepared for bed, I thought about the extraordinary transformation that had occurred over these 12 months. I had lost a family built on lies, manipulation, and conditional love, but I had gained something infinitely more valuable: the knowledge that I could trust my own moral compass, the courage to stand up for what's right regardless of personal cost, and a chosen family based on authenticity, respect, and genuine care. The woman who had stood rejected on those stone steps a year ago barely resembled the person I had become. That experience had forced me to discover strength I didn't know I possessed and values I had never fully tested. The pain had been necessary to create space for genuine growth and self-discovery. My final thought before sleep was a simple but profound realization. The family you choose can indeed be more meaningful, supportive, and loving than the one you were born into. Sometimes rejection becomes the greatest gift you never knew you needed. Have you ever faced a difficult choice between family loyalty and your personal values? I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most unexpected blessings, and sharing our stories helps others find courage for their own challenging journeys. If this story resonated with your own experiences, please like this video and subscribe to hear more authentic stories about finding strength and purpose through difficult times. Remember, the family you choose based on shared values and mutual respect can be even more meaningful than biological connections. Thank you for being part of my journey today, and I wish each of you a holiday season filled with genuine connections, heartfelt gratitude, and the courage to live according to your deepest values.